Good morning, everyone. This is the Economic Development Commission special meeting of Wednesday, January 14th. We're meeting in the Old Town Hall conference room as well as via Zoom. The time now is 8:33. We do have a quorum, and so I'll turn things over to you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks for adjusting to accommodate.
My apologies.
It worked out good for me, so it
Worked out better for me too.
Oh, wow.
I'll join in. No.
So I just call over approve minutes from our December meeting. Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
I will abstain as I was not present.
The notes.
Yeah, but you never know.
You can watch the recording. There's no excuses anymore.
That's true.
It's true.
With that, I will turn things over to our first leader, Mark.
Yeah, so usually at this time of year, it's a good opportunity for us to look back on this past year as well as look ahead for what might be in store for 2026. I included in your packet kind of a one-page handout that kind of touches on the highlights from my perspective in terms of what our department and this commission did this past year. And then some of the things that we're thinking about for 2026. And I'll go over those in more detail, but I thought I would also share with you a slide presentation that kind of presents this information in a slightly different format. So hopefully everyone joining online can see the screen. So just a little bit. Oh, great. Thanks. Our department is small but mighty. Small staff of three and a half, I guess, now. But we do a lot of different things. So we're administering federal grants on behalf of the town through the Community Development Block Grant Program, some other state and local grants as well. Those are aimed at, a lot of different things, but community development, stimulating, encourage economic development, strengthening neighborhoods, promoting affordable housing, generally looking out for how to move Fairfield forward. We provide staff support to not only this commission, but also the Affordable Housing Committee, the Fair Rent Commission, and the Arts Commission. So this past year was a pretty good year for all parties concerned from our perspective in terms of the work that we accomplished. We did receive recognition for the first cultural district in Fairfield by the state. We did achieve enough points to qualify and receive a moratorium for housing, which is important, providing local control over future development. Work with this board, Colin shepherding through on the RTM, along with Michelle McCabe, the town's participation in the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority. So all in all, I thought it was a very productive year. Obviously, we missed Bill. Did want to note that that was unfortunate. So looking at Fairfield, I think everyone in this room, and I say that when we meet with the chamber, we have the Economic Outlook breakfast coming up. Speaking to a very hospitable, receptive audience of folks in the room, know that Fairfield's a great place to live, work, play, raise a family, start a business. I think everyone says that, right? So what really separates, what really distinguishes Fairfield, sets us apart? And I think one of the things that I find is that you find in Fairfield a lot of things that you would associate with much larger communities, big cities, in a suburban small town package. And I think that's really special. And I think the other thing that really sets us apart is the fact that for a community our size, we're very fortunate to have two outstanding private universities in our own backyard. And I think, from those two perspectives, obviously universities are significant employers, provide a lot of vitality to the community from a cultural and economic development perspective, but also provide that access to young rising talent that all businesses covet. And so you put all that together, and I think Fairfield's really a special place. This past year, we had a lot of new businesses join. There's always a little bit of churn in the local economy. We see that. We did welcome at least 63. those are the ones that we identify that we do ribbon cuttings and other promotions around. They typically are service or retail-oriented businesses, but there are a lot of other businesses that do call Fairfield home. At last count, I think the assessor has over 3,500 businesses. The Connecticut Secretary of State has like 88,000 plus businesses recognized in town. A lot of those are paper LLCs, as you can imagine. So we have a very diverse business community, which we're very fortunate with the Chamber of Commerce to have. So we did support, this board supported our participation in the CMDA. We did manage to close out finally the grant for the Stratfield Village improvements. We've worked with the Chamber on a lot of different initiatives, and the first time this past year we had a small business appreciation reception at Penfield in November, which I think was very well received, despite the fact that it came together kind of at the last minute.
Yes.
But I think it was well received and again, well attended, and hopefully that's something we can build on, make that an annual tradition. And then we do have workshops that we put on periodically. This past year, we did one with the Connecticut Green Bank on the CPACE and small business incentive programs. I looked at a couple, this is a slide from last year, just an update from last year to this year. So the top corner, we have the first project at Ash Creek Crossings, or it's now called Creek Line, I believe. So this is the 7-unit apartment building as part of the Fairfield Black Rock Station development. The new Gengris Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram dealership at 251 Commerce, which was completed, building addition, 18,000 square foot addition and renovation of that SCAP dealership. And then the small mixed-use development at 161 Sherman Street, which has retail on the first floor, offices on the second, and a couple apartments above. More recent development activity, just issued building permits and started work on upper left is the former Dolan School conversion for sophomore housing. The apartments that you probably saw coming in, 131 Beach Road, 40 units, which is nearing completion. They're doing lease up now. Lower right is the new gymnasium and performance space addition at Fairfield Prep. And then the lower left is the 91-unit apartment building constructed by Garden Homes on Bronson Road, which again is very close to being completed. Both the residential developments are 830G developments. They were approved, actually received prior to the moratorium taking effect, but they will count towards a subsequent moratorium, which we're anxious to proceed with. In terms of our local labor market, we're 14th largest in the state, 32,000 workers. A lot of them are associated with the universities being local, but we have a highly productive labor force, highly educated, which we export to job centers in the area. There are over 250,000 highly educated, high productive workers within 25 minutes of our downtown, which we'd like to emphasize. And some of these, management, finance, IT professionals predominate, larger per capita than New York City. We had a banner year this past year. A lot of this took place in the last couple of months, new development. So over $130 million in new construction permits being issued on the commercial and institutional side, which, as you can see, is a record, at least for the last 20-some years. And this is a list of some of the more significant ones. You'll see in December, we had a lot of building permits issued, 20-unit residential development at 159 Post Road, long delayed. That's being leased to Fairfield University, at least in the initial phases, to provide graduate housing. The Foundry is that large mixed-use development between the Fairfield Black Rock Station and Illicit Brewing, which just started remediation and site work. Then the Porsche Penske Automotive, the new auto dealership service center on the former Exide battery site. But it's a fairly diverse group, you can see, but some big numbers there. Our office market continues to perform well. It's a small sub-market compared to others, roughly on par with Trumbull. But you can see, the trend is we saw a slight uptick in vacancy availability, but at 12.6%, that compares quite favorably to those surrounding communities, the lowest. And, look at Fairfield County and Stanford Central Business District and Norwalk as a whole. You can see that we're doing pretty well. Part of it is a factor of the size of our submarket, a lot of small office space. So when a business moves out or moves in, it doesn't really change the needle all that much. We did talk about housing production. We have certainly seen an uptick or an increase in production activity in the last 10 years. The average prior to that was about 92 units, and now we're averaging slightly over 150 units per year. More importantly, the types of units that are being built, I think you know this intuitively, both based on your own experience driving around town. Historically, at least in the last period of time, we were doing a lot of single-family home development. In period 2003 to 2013, that represented about 81% of the new housing being built, and now it's about half is a multifamily, the 5+ units. So different types of housing. Still, the predominant housing typology here is single-family home. It represents about 85% of our housing stock, according to the latest census information. Yeah, I share this slide all the time because I think it's important to note. We talk about growing the commercial grand list. I think it's very productive, highly productive grand list to begin with, but it only represents 4.5% of our land mass is zoned for commercial industrial uses. And it, again, you're familiar with Fairfield. It's along the Post Road, along the north-south axis, Black Rock Turnpike, that corridor. I don't know that there's much opportunity to upzone from residential to commercial. So it's really important that we leverage those commercial assets as best we can and get the highest possible yield for future development. So when we look at that, I compared different types of uses on property, and you can see the first two are residential or mixed-use developments. Then we have a Whole Foods anchored retail plaza and then a small office building downtown, all of which were built roughly around the same time. But in terms of, again, property taxes per acre or property tax, you can see there's a pretty significant yield, which you can appreciate because they're more vertical. So you're getting more bang for your buck on, land, which is a limited resource, finite limited resource in town. I did want to look at, because there's been a lot of conversation about the impact of the revaluation and the shift from commercial to residential. So I looked at, the change in valuation from assessed value in 10/1/24 to under the proposed, revaluation. And, we're seeing about 30%, except for the office building, which saw a negative reduction. So some of these, again, when you assess commercial space, typically it's on an income approach. And we haven't seen a lot of, fortunately for many of our office and retail tenants, asking rates, rental rates have been fairly flat, but that doesn't necessarily accrue to the benefit of increased valuation. But these are, pretty significant commercial assets in their own right across the board. So we did look at a couple key development sites this past year. So where we're at with some of these, we mentioned Exide Battery site, which has been ground leased to Penske Automotive Group. That's under construction. We did complete the first building as part of the crossings at Fairfield Metro development. The former Bullard site is under construction for the mixed-use development there. And the Cirque Wind property, there's two proposals for that site, both of which have been approved. One is an 830G, but we're focused on the mixed-use development, which includes a new refurbished 110-key hotel. So just briefly, Exide, the site, we did Originally, it was denied by Planning and Zoning, but they did approve a settlement in May. They've since issued a building permit. The work is commenced on that site. That'll probably be about a year to complete. So I know they're pushing hard. That's a visual representation of what the new Generation 5 dealership will look like. This is a very important site for us, the Fairfield Black Rock train station. It's 24 acres, but about 10 is actually approved for commercial use of some sort or future development. About 10 acres is set aside as a open space conservation easement. It is approved for about 360 units with a hotel. Accurate, AMZEC had purchased the site. Accurate's no longer part of the picture. They're the New Jersey-based development firm. It's now the equity partner, the money behind the deal, AMZEC, they're based in Florida, has taken over completely. They purchased the site back in 2022. They completed that first building. They did present a revised master plan for the site back in 2023 with the change in, and I guess, lead developer here. They're planning to visit that and hopefully get back before Planning and Zoning with a concept review sometime in the next few months. I mentioned the former Bullard site, worked hard to secure some brownfield funding for it. We ultimately decided not to accept the dollars because of, at the time, there was a requirement that they pay prevailing wage for the entire redevelopment of the site, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. The state's contribution was about $3 million for brownfield to assist with the remediation of the site, which was part of a much larger $125 million development. So to pay a premium on your labor costs for $125 million, the developer said thanks, but no thanks. But they were able to figure it out on their own. They just broke ground again with the site work and remediation, which I expect them to be completed. You'll see a lot of trucks out there. They're trucking a lot of the dirt that exceeds the residential requirements for PCBs. That's being trucked off-site to an off-site disposal facility out of state. That should be completed in the next few weeks, and then they'll start with the rest of the site work and eventual construction. Indian Harmon was the one that we haven't seen a lot of activity on, although they continue to do environmental assessment of this work. It doesn't seem like either the state or the company is in particularly a hurry. It's nominally a 9.5 acre site, but really only about 2 to 3 acres is actually usable. It's pretty dirty because this was the location of their wastewater treatment facility for precious metal processing. So everything kind of went downstream and then into the Turney Creek in the back. So there's a lot of wetlands on the site. They're continuing to do mapping and assessment of the environmental ecological risk and to develop an environmental remediation plan, but we're still a little bit away from that. And then the last is the Circle Inn, which has been approved, about a 6.5 acre site, projected $90 million capital investment, which would net about $1.5 million in taxes annually. So a pretty big transformative development. There are a couple other, I'll pause there because that's my last slide, but there are the couple development sites. One is Sturm Ruger, which is on the market actively. So we've been getting inquiries for that. What's left of Sturm Ruger is the office headquarters. But their workforce is much reduced. All their manufacturing has moved out of state a long time ago in New Hampshire and Arizona, the domestic manufacturer for Sturm Ruger. But that site has been in conversation for a number of years, but now is actively being marketed. And we saw the medical office building, which is a condo on Beach Road, also listed recently, both as an investment opportunity or as a redevelopment option as well. So, we've fielded inquiries on both. One We'll have to wait and see on either. The only other one I didn't mention, I might want to include is Thorpe Street, which is Bob Cinto's property at the end of Thorpe Street, which was approved for 150 units of senior housing. There's been some movement there. They're coming back before planning and zoning with some revisions to that overall the overall plan for that site. No longer involving the Jewish home, which was originally part of the deal. So, but that's another development site that we're very much looking at. So I'll pause there and stop sharing my screen. Happy to answer questions.
Great, Mark. It gives you a very optimistic view of the town. I mean, there's certainly some challenges that remain, but they're longstanding and not really within our control. Whether the stern,
Well, people have a right in this country. They still have a right to do it, actually have some say as to how they develop or what they do with their own properties. So, we regulate that through zoning, not always appropriately, but we try. But it's an imperfect instrument. So we do, I think that was what I should mention also, the fact that we adopted a plan of conservation development is a major milestone this past year. So kudos to the Planning and Zoning Commission and Planning and Zoning staff, because that's really helpful for us. I mean, it helps me articulate to folks that are looking to invest in our community what it is that we're looking for and where we're looking to see that type of investment. What kind of development are we seeking and where best to locate it. And I think most developers, investors are looking not to rock the boat. They try to work within your regulations as best they can, unless it's completely not market sensitive. So in that case, then we're trying to massage our regulations to some degree. If it's something that we want to pursue, then we're trying to make some tweaks where necessary to accommodate that. But it starts with a master plan, so I think that's very helpful.
So you had the net tax gain on the Circle Inn. Do we aggregate with the next, because for such a last couple of years, great new construction?
Yep.
Do we capture that net gain? There's always such pushback to all these projects. I mean, maybe showing the benefit to the town in
There's a lot of variables.
simpler way.
We have seen, if you look at our grand list over the last, 10, 20 years, we have seen generally positive growth. That was something that came up in my conversation with the reporter who wanted to do a retrospective on the GE departure 10 years ago. And you look back, and despite the loss of GE, which took that property off the tax rolls, which was generating about $1.5 million at the time of their leaving, and when it was sold to Sacred Heart, we did, even despite that, we saw positive growth in our commercial grand list. So I do think the other thing I would mention is that our grand list is rather large. So to actually make a change in our grand list, a positive change, takes a lot of effort, a lot of projects.
And a lot of time.
What's that?
And a lot of time.
And a lot of time. So it's important to have a pipeline that you have projects in various stages of development so you continue to see that. But from my perspective, we're focused on our existing business base to try to retain businesses that already call Fairfield home. But when you're bringing in new businesses, if they're just moving into an existing space, your office vacancy rate goes down, obviously, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't really change the grand list all that much, because unless they're bringing in a boatload of business personal property, and I don't really see that unless you're a huge data center, which has its own issues, it's not really changing the grand list, which is everyone's focused on, especially this time of year as the budget begins to take shape. So really, when we're talking about grand list growth, we're talking about new development.
Given that focus, I'm curious if you can share any outlook for what your budget looks like your request looks like for next fiscal year.
My budget is.
Because it kind of seems like potentially like a opportune time, at least if I'm sitting in your chair, to say like, hey, like we're a small team, and like there's renewed focus on, growing the commercial grand list.
Yeah, it is. My budget request is relatively modest. I'm a frugal guy to begin with, so maybe that's to my detriment. But I would say, and since Christine Vitale,
I know. It was a good time to ask the
I mean, we're meeting with them later in the day, so I guess I'm getting a preview.
and I do have a budget meeting coming up at 10
Literally,
o'clock.
in about an hour.
So thank you, Colin, for that.
That was set up.
So I will say, we always try to pride ourselves in doing more with less. We understand that there's fiscal constraints. We're always trying to stretch the dollar as much as we can to provide the best bang for the buck for the taxpayer. But I will say that this past year or so, it has been a strain on our staff. We were fortunate to get an additional half position to focus on some of the housing issues, which I think has been helpful. I probably could use a few more bodies, or maybe reassignment of some of these. I mean, as much as I love working with some of these groups, it really does take away the time that I can spend working with our business community. And so I think that's true not just for me, but for my staff as well. I look at what Mary Alice does from a marketing, business management, business development perspective. And, because we don't have a lot of administrative support personnel, we all have to pitch in and do that stuff. And it falls on Mary Alice particularly. So again, if I had my druthers, at some point, I'd try to create another administrative, even a half-time administrative position to help take some of that stuff off of her so that she can focus her attention on what we hired her for, which is what she does really well, which is the marketing piece. And if you look at, again, we're trying to do a lot of marketing, not just around why businesses should choose Fairfield, but we're doing marketing to support our tourism partners as to why people should come and enjoy it, spend a day, and hopefully stay for a while here in Fairfield. A lot of business support for our mercantile base and our restaurants, and we have Restaurant Week coming up and an indoor sidewalk sale. I don't think we can create any more events. In fact, but here we did. We did it again. We created another event, indoor sidewalk sale, because that's what our merchants wanted. And we said, sure, we'll try to make that happen. But there's a point at which it becomes untenable. And we're very efficient. We try to be, but I don't know how sustainable it is. And again, it would be helpful to refocus our attention on.
My thought was, we've talked a lot about over the past couple of years about how we can sort of support smaller entrepreneurs in town, knowing that we have both the universities, we have lots of folks who are entrepreneurial that live in town, right, and that are part of corporations as well. And I know things like, I think we've talked about Startup Westport and kind of what they've done, and it's kind of like a bit of a model of what could be. Now feels like a good time to I think, to kind of put even greater focus on that, because to your point, it's almost like it's almost like the way in which I think about it is you have to both yes, we would love to have a big business come to town in whatever capacity that would look like given the constraints that we currently have. But that's kind of that's a unicorn situation in a lot of ways to me. It's more about, I think, about how do we support smaller entrepreneurial sort of startup-y situations that potentially could grow, and maybe they take on a small parcel of kind of underperforming property and turn it into a smaller site for their growing business. That's the long game. I think that is probably has higher yield, at least.
Yeah, you don't see the results right away, but I think it is a better long-term play for the town as a whole and more realistic. There's always three legs to the economic development stool. You have the business retention and expansion piece, which we tend to focus on, rightfully so. It starts at home, right? And making sure that businesses have the support they need to continue to prosper and grow. But then you have small business development, which is another important leg, which I think, could play a more important role. Maybe we need to retool our microenterprise assistance program. We've used a small part of our CDBG program for that assistance, but we don't see a lot of application or a lot of activity. But there might be other things that we can do in that space, to your point. And then the other piece is business recruitment, business attraction, which again, we don't control a lot of the real estate in town. So you have to do that in concert with the people that actually own the dirt, because otherwise, Fairfield has a tremendous reputation in the marketplace. It's only a question of being able to accommodate that. So if you get somebody to say, yeah, I'd love to move to Fairfield, where am I going?
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of space available, which is good, but on the other hand, it doesn't help, business recruitment efforts. Outside of the train station itself, which was envisioned as, big block office space, we don't see a lot of that, to your point, like Unicorn. So it really is about more hitting the singles than the home run.
And I will say, at least in my industry of technology and digital advertising, I've seen Startup Westport actually on LinkedIn quite a bit with people that I just know, that I didn't even know live in the area, that they seem to be doing a lot of really cool, interesting stuff.
Jen, isn't Fairfield you doing like a Shark Tank sort of event?
They do.
Do that, yeah.
Yeah, we do every spring. It's a student-based competition. But we've had, I'd say at least 4 to 5 student startups actually succeed into businesses. One locally is Victory Insoles. I don't know if you're familiar with insoles, but it's a high-performance insole for sports. But they're based out of Stratford, I believe.
Mm-hmm. We had assisted one business coming through that program that was here briefly before they again went back to where they were originally from, Long Island, and they grew that business. It was a clothing retailer type setup.
Maybe we think about, like, I know we've talked about this again, and maybe it's one of us, maybe it's me, I don't know, needs to step up to the plate and like actually think about like how can we more formalize a partnership between the two universities and use that kind of as like a model to build upon what our startup Fairfield.
That's a great goal. I think that would be
Jen,
wow.
I thought Sacred Heart had like incubator space or like.
They do.
Yep. Yep, we had incubator space. And so we used to have a similar type Shark Tank event, but we did it with freshmen. So it wasn't quite as evolved as, having gone through 4 years of education. So I'm not sure if they will reinvent that to sort of the final project versus getting their feet wet and excited about learning about business. Mm-hmm. But we do have incubator space, and we have had some students.
Just to brainstorm like a networking situation, like combining all those elements to a certain extent where you could get people talking to each other, because usually that's the barrier, just getting to know people and connecting those dots. Maybe just build it around a speaker or topic on a quarterly basis or something. Just we can talk offline.
Yeah, we should.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
I think that we can put that as a goal for this year.
All right.
Absolutely.
Is our square,
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Beth?
is our square foot rate for rental, like if someone wants to come and have an office, like similar to Westport, the square footage?
I think on the office side, yes. And it really depends, very location specific. I mean, that shouldn't surprise you. And also for office space, it depends on the quality of the space. We don't have a lot of Class A office space. So as you go down, and there has been, because there's such a glut of space available, not just in Fairfield, but regionally. So businesses that have a choice, you'll hear a flight to quality. So you'll see a lot of businesses that are upgrading from a Class B or Class C space to a Class A, because it's affordable, because there's quite a bit of it available. So as supply increases and demand is not enough to compensate that, then you have a reduction in your cost. So we have seen a little bit of moderation in that. So it's really the small businesses, people that are local, that live here and don't want to have to commute to some other place. That's what we specialize in, small blocks of space. But when we get to a certain size, 15,000 or so square feet, unless you own the space yourself, that's about the limit of what we can accommodate. We've got a couple buildings, 501 Kings Highway, 55 walls that can accommodate larger office users, but that's about the limit of that. And then when they get to a little bit bigger than that, then, they're frequently going south. So, we have had businesses that were here and then moved. Recently, we got back a business, HEI Hotels and Resorts, that moved from Norwalk to Fairfield. So maybe they compensate for FactSet moving from Fairfield to Norwalk way back when. So, it is part of the nature of it. But yeah, I don't think that our office market, the rental rates is that much different.
Is that much, so it's comparable?
Retail, yes, as you go further towards New York City, the retail rates, but even those have moderated some. Westport used to be a lot higher, and I don't think that's true anymore. We're at top end of the market for retail is about $50 a square foot triple net, which is pretty heavy, especially for a local. Restaurants can make it work, banks to some extent, but we've seen even a retrenchment in that industry as well. Other questions? Kenny, thanks for joining. I see you.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You know this world very well.
Yeah, I swim in that shark-infested waters every day.
Well, thanks for joining your commute into the city. I pretty much touched on a lot of the development sites pending applications. There is one of note that we didn't mention. Had been approved by Planning and Zoning. It's now back before Water Pollution Control Authority. It's I've referred to it as trademark Phase 3, which is the redevelopment of 730, 750 Commerce Drive, where Rio Bravo is or was. And there's a small, building next to it that was a concrete testing facility. So all those buildings would be demolished. And then a new 5-story building would be constructed on it. Mixed-use ground floor commercial with some residential above. What's notable about this is they also included a public plaza with a public art component that the Arts Commission supported. We actually amended our regs to facilitate that, to encourage that kind of thing where public art would be integrated as part of a private development. But they're before Water Pollution Control Authority because, the way we used to build sewers is we take this shortest path between point A and point B as a straight line. If we went across private property, we took an easement. We have a 10-foot easement across the property. Part of the building that they're proposing to build would be over top of it. The sewer is very deep. It's like 25 feet down. So it's not like we're going to be excavating that pipe anytime soon. We certainly couldn't do it within a 10-foot easement. But the Water Pollution Control Authority is wrestling with, how to modify that to protect the town's interest long-term, to maintain the pipe, which most likely means the way that they installed it in the first place was they didn't dig it up or, dig it conventionally. They kind of jacked it through. And that's kind of what we would have to do in the future. Or perhaps we might relocate it into a public right-of-way so that it's not, we had that issue with the East Trunk Sewer too, where, again, the path of least resistance was to run it down Ash Creek. But that has its own issues with the mudflats creating a major source of infiltration, which is why we're replacing that pipe too. So that's something that we're focused in on and monitoring as it winds its way through the final approvals. And then I did include in my report, and I know Bev has some other things to mention, 2 things upcoming, 3 things actually. So we have Restaurant Week. We're now doing this twice a year. Winter edition coming up at the end of January, February 8th. We have almost 30 restaurants participating, many of the usual suspects. So stay hungry. And then we have our indoor sidewalk sale, which was it's a new event that we're holding at on the 2nd story of the Fairfield University store on the 24th of January. Just again, a way to help support our local merchants. This is not just for downtown businesses, but We have some other retailers participating from out of town. I mean, not out of town, in other parts of the town. And then for anyone who knows an artist, we're doing the second version of Artistic Vision Challenge. We're having an open house brainstorming session tomorrow night at the warehouse at FTC, beginning at 6. But feel free to pass this along if you know any artists. This year, the theme is America's 250th. And we're also opening it up to both a student as well as adult artists. So pretty much 10 plus.
The semi-sesquicentennial, I just figured out how to say that
Very good. Very good.
without just tripping over my tongue on that.
I know I will pause because I know Bev has a couple updates as well.
Yeah, so next week on January 22nd at the Patterson Club, we're holding our annual 2026 Economic Outlook Breakfast, and it is a fabulous event. So John Trainer is the guest speaker. He had been with People's United Bank way back when. And he now is with Cambridge Trust, and which is part of Eastern Bank. So we actually start with Christine, and she gets up and welcomes everyone. So it's just kind of nice. And then we jump down to Mark, and he'll be doing something similar to what we saw today. And then John comes in, and he really talks about national trends, what's going on, what we can expect. And then also drill down to the state level as well. So when you meet with John, and both of you are speaking, that we cover that as well. And then drill down even a little further with Mark's presentation on Fairfield and the town of Fairfield and what's going on. So it's a very popular event. I don't have any flyers with me, but I recommend attending. It's great networking, but it really gives a clear perspective on what's going on, and certainly in the state of Connecticut as well as the town of Fairfield. So if you're interested, you can go to the Chamber website and register for a ticket. And but it's nice. It's very local, great attendance, and the Patterson Club is beautiful. So that's one of our nice events that we have coming up.
Well, at least Christine and I don't have to follow John.
Right, well, yeah, no. Great and welcome, everyone.
We're just a warm-up act.
So that one's very, very popular for sure, and we're starting to do our planning for, the rest of the year, and helping out here when we can for the pop-up indoor sidewalk sale. I think that's fun. It's the first time you've done this, right? How many businesses are coming in?
I think we have 10,
Yeah.
11 businesses. It's pretty limited space, but, it's the first year, but we have, I think, 10 or 11 businesses confirmed. So
That's great.
we'll give it a shot, see how it works.
And then on March 11th, last year, the Chamber launched its first Women in Business Awards reception and held it at the Quick Center. And hope to announce all of this by the end of the week of the nominations of women that have been submitted. So we've got received a lot of nominations, which was great.
Good.
So that's a big one coming up. And the month of March is also Women's History Month. So it's a nice way to integrate both of them in concept and in person for sure. Fran Pastor, last year we had Cindy Bigelow. She was our guest speaker. She was fantastic, and we kind of got on stage and had some good Q&A. This year we have Fran Pastor, who is an incredible speaker. She is just everywhere, and she is global. She founded about 30 years ago the Business Council, the Women's Business Council, and Governor Lamont has her up in Connecticut Women Issues. So she's all about that and women and success. So if you would like to mark on your calendar March 11th, that would be great. And it's not just for women. We want men to attend and support the women who are being honored. So I get this every year, but please attend. And last year was a sellout. We had 250 people at the Quick Center, a reception in the lobby, and then going to the theater for the actual award presentations. And what I'm doing this year is those honorees who received last year, I'm going to have them give the award to the new honorees this year, so they have an opportunity to be back on stage again. So it'll be nice, and everyone loved that idea. So 2 nice events coming up with the Fairfield Chamber of Commerce. We are going to, in February, which I come together with the Westport Chamber under the Valentine's theme is we love our members. So we're holding it at the Westport, the new Delamar at the Westport Inn. So that'll be nice as well. So lots going on as usual. As Mark said, I have one person, you've got 1.5. We do a lot and appreciate the community and education, giving education out to the community as well. So all good.
Well, on that theme too, we're going to be doing the Love Local
Oh, right, the hearts.
program. Again, working with our local elementary schools and some of our businesses to display artwork in the windows, what they like most about Fairfield. So it's been, actually, we opened it up to businesses to reserve space, and it's sold out in minutes. We only had like 10 slots. I think we're oversubscribed by some, but it was we had people complaining because they got on right after we announced it, and we'd already filled all the slots. So I think we're going to have to get more kids involved with the artwork. I think the issue, and I said that again, Mary Alice does yeoman's work in our office. She's amazing, but she does a lot of the installation work. And so we're trying to figure out another plan where, it's great to run the program, but maybe we don't have to have her running around town hanging up things. But, she takes pride in making sure that things are presented just so, which I like. She's very, very meticulous. So we just have to figure out a way to give up a little bit more of that control so we can stretch her a little bit further.
Yeah, it sounds like a great service project for a high schooler.
I do too.
It is.
Yeah,
I think so.
we're gonna think through that mechanism as well. So I think we've got a couple of takeaways from this meeting for sure. I really thank Colin for that. Small business development piece, I think, is something we should, again, it goes in cycles, and we're starting to see, again, an uptick in interest for people looking to start a business. And typically what we're doing is trying to help them. There are other people operating in this space that provide the one-on-one business counseling, but we want to provide a whole suite of tools and resources so that it makes that process a little easier. So we become the go-to place for people looking to start a business. They're thinking about it here.
That's great.
So I think that's a great idea.
And speaking of hearts, we have our banners going up this week. So the I Love Local banners that run up and down Post Road, and then some over on Mill Plain. And the timing is good, and the intention is, even though the holidays are over, to still remind our residents and people driving up and down town that even though the holidays are over, to continue to shop local and be local and keep that messaging out there. So those will be going up this week, I think, on Thursday.
They will,
Yep.
weather permitting.
Yes.
And that's all I think we have for today, Mr. Chair. We have a couple guests.
Yes.
Christine Vitale, our first selectman, Christine Brown, our chief of staff, Lisa Clare, communications director. So I don't know, would you like to say anything?
Just, I've been watching your meetings on Fair TV, and I usually have a conflict at this time, but I was free this morning, so just wanted to come in, see everybody in person. Thank you for your work, find out what's going on in advance of our budget meeting later. And as Mark stated, lots of concerns right now about just the reval and the shift from commercial to residential. So just want to see what you're thinking for plans for the future. Thank you for your work.
Thanks for coming.
Anything else from the folks joining on Zoom?
Just a little comment. I know that when Fairfield U and Sacred Heart occupy space in town, there's either limited or no revenue derived for tax base. I know the community theater was on a 10-year program where they were tax-free. I think we're about halfway through that, if I'm correct. Is it 5 years now we've had the community theater under their banner?
Actually, we're getting close to the original term. So, and it was a partial tax abatement that phased out over that 10-year term, which was necessary to actually facilitate the building and accommodate a theater use, which is not necessarily, something that people would be looking to do to earn a lot of return on their investment. So, but you're right. That piece is on the tax roll because it does host not just the theater, which is an educational purpose, but it also is a multi-dimensional space, performance space, as well as we have restaurants and other office in that building. So it is it remains on the tax roll.
Do we get portion, like, apply back to the state to get a portion of, like?
Yeah, we have a pilot. The pilot, the pie is pretty much stayed it hasn't grown as much as the number of exempt uses. So the pie gets divvied up in smaller and smaller pieces. So we don't get anywhere close to full value reimbursed by the state, but it is something. Yeah.
It's not 1.5 million, but.
No, it's not.
But it's something.
I would point out, it came up certainly with regard to the retrospective on GE and the acquisition of the property by Sacred Heart, which became a tax exempt use, took it off the tax rolls. But at the time, we were the other uses for that site was more or less a residential conversion. There weren't a lot of demand for this type of office space, and there's a reason why GE was looking to move. It's no longer vogue to have these isolated campuses in a suburban community. So you see a lot of these suburban office parks that have gone through much the same thing, some of which have been converted for residential. So, it wasn't like we were going to attract another company of GE size or ilk to take that space. So it was really a choice. And it wasn't really our choice, too, because we weren't the property owner. GE sold it based on their own evaluation of what made the most sense for them.
I don't think they fulfilled their promises to Boston for the relocation either, though.
What's that?
I don't think they
That's interesting.
fulfilled what they committed to Boston-wise. I mean,
No, I think, and that's oftentimes the case when states, we were in that business too for many years, where, shower all kinds of benefits to attract business out of state. And it doesn't always play out the way, that people envision. So I think we're really fortunate to have two outstanding private universities in town. They do provide significant employment, much more so even individually than GE ever did, including some folks that are pretty well compensated on par with folks that work for a multinational company like GE. But, it's, in addition to that, it certainly helps from the standpoint of making this a much more vibrant community from a cultural standpoint, from a development standpoint. So, and I know Jen's provided report. It's available for Sacred Heart as well, not quite in the same format, but you can find information about the economic impact. So there's no question that the universities, despite the fact that they're not tax-paying entities in the traditional sense, they do provide a significant economic impact to not just the town, but the state as a whole. Just, it doesn't help us when we come to cover the budget.
Yeah, one of the things to think about with that too, I know the last meeting, I think it was the last meeting I presented the economic development report. And I'm happy to email that out if anybody would like a copy of it. But I think one of the things to think about is what are universities doing with their dollars that they give back to the community. So for instance, the associate degree school in Bridgeport, I know that's not, within Fairfield, but it's in close proximity to a neighboring community. That cost us to rent start associate degree school where, 200 kids are getting a free education associate degree. 36 of those kids are transferring into Fairfield their junior year, full ride. So when you think about where those dollars are going, that would potentially not be there if the tax base wasn't what it was. The good that is going back into the community often is pretty significant. That's beyond, being the largest employer. I think Sacred Heart and us are the largest top two employers. That doesn't be, when you looked at what Mark presented in terms of growth and development, the amount of things that we're doing in terms of hiring, construction and building space and all of that kind of stuff. So, when you look at it from that standpoint, there's a good significant number of businesses that if it weren't for Sacred Heart and Fairfield students wouldn't be here today.
Oh, up and down Black Rock Turnpike, those restaurants and a lot of the shops would not half of them wouldn't exist without Fairfield U and Sacred Heart.
There's a tremendous economic impact for sure. But I think to the point that Colin raised earlier, it's, how can we better leverage the fact that we have these universities in town to help with our other business development objectives. And so I think that's been an ongoing conversation. I think that makes sense to revisit that, again, looking specifically at the small business creation piece. Because I think that's really, again, it doesn't necessarily move the needle big time in terms of grand list growth or things like that, but it's one of those things that will accrue to the benefit of the town long term.
Right. And to your point, it's really hard to make big splashes to the grand list.
Yeah. Well, outside of construction, which, we're doing, but there's a limit to
You
what
only
you
have
can do.
so much control there.
Right.
With that, we're at time. Should I motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I don't want to cut anyone off.
Well, thank you all. Thanks very much for attending. And,
Thank you,
I
Mark.
think that carried.
Yes, I think so.
I didn't hear any
Thank you.
objections. Have a good rest of your day.
I
Here.